This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com.
Hello, I'm Helene Woods, and this is Let's Quilt episode number 2. We're going to start working on our wall hanging today, and this should be a fun show, so let's get going. Before we start practicing with our rotary cutter, I'd like to just go over a few things that you should be having before we start this part of our quilt. We'll need a cutting board, cutting mat, I guess you call them, some rulers, and of course the cutting wheel itself. I wanted to take a few minutes to show you how the fabric would look if you had put it into the washing machine. As you can see, it's all frayed, and so we're going to have to straighten that out. In doing that, I'm going to lay my fabric right here on the cutting board. I'm going to bring it down to a nice level line. Then I'm going to straighten it, take my hand and straighten it out, get it nice and flat. We're going to take our ruler, and we want to make this straight. So I'm going to bring my ruler over to this line here. Their line. Now I'm going to take my rotary blade in my hand. And it is releasing. So I'm going to put it on here. Now we always cut with the rotary cutter away from us, never towards us. So I'm going to leave it on here, and I'm going to ask you to, when you cut, raise your hand up a little bit. And then as you go along, you still keep cutting, but remember to walk your hand down and try to keep that ruler just as straight as you can. There. So we've got a nice straight edge. Now I'm going to start cutting our strips. And here again, accuracy is the most important thing we can do. Because of this pattern, we just need a few little of the blue blocks. I'm going to take the fabric, and I'm just going to take it, and I'm going to, on the fold, I'm going to put it on a line here, and I'm going to take my small square, and I'm just going to cut that in two. And that will give you a nice piece of fabric to be able to work with for a later project. So we'll just take this and fold it up and put it away. Now I'm going to take the longer piece, and with this we're going to lay it on a line. We'll square it up here on the left-hand side, put it right on that yellow line. And I think I can use my long ruler if I want to, but I think in this case I'm going to take this and fold it back in half again. Now I'm going to count over here on my squares, and I'm going to lay my ruler down, and I'm going to put it right at 3.5 inches. I'm going to line it up all the way across, so to make sure we get it very, very accurate. That's very important. And then I'm going to take the rotary cutter, and I'm just going to cut that right along. That takes care of that cut. Now we're going to cut this into our blocks. And here again, we're going to have to do a little trimming, at least on the left-hand side. Here is the selvage end, and that's the tightly woven part. You don't use any of that in your quilting at all. So that's one of the first things, and I usually measure in half an inch or so, maybe a quarter, and just cut that selvage off. And that takes care of that. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay this strip, smooth it down, and I'm going to get it right on one of the yellow lines on here. Now this is when I can use my 3.5 inch ruler that I marked with the masking tape. I'm going to lay that right on the end, come along here, square it up if it has to be done, and cut it. Now I'm going to cut 5 of these blocks. And those will be the start of making the blocks for our quilt. There we go, the 5 of them all cut and ready to be sewn. Now we're going to cut our white fabric. We're going to use 1/4 yard of this, and from that 1/4 yard we're going to make one 3.5 inch strip. From that 3.5 inch strip we're going to recut it again into 8 squares. So here's the strip. I've cut it, and as you can see, this is double. I have the strip all laid out here, and now we're going to cut it into 3.5 inch squares. And I've measured off my 3.5, and I'm going to cut right that. I'm going to move it over. I'll take my ruler to the next one, take it over, and I'm going to cut it and move it over. So then when we get all done, we will have four squares, which will end up being 8 when we're ready to sew. For our second border, we're going to need to cut 2 2.5 inch strips. And then we are going to subcut them into a smaller strip, and that will be, I'm going to be laying this out like this. The first one, there again, we have our selvage, so we're going to have to remove the selvage. I'm going to take my rotary cutter and just cut this off. Then from that, I'm going to measure, and I'm going to cut the 21 inch strip. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3, cut along here. I'm going to cut it off at 21 inches. Get that off. There. And I'm going to cut another one off at 21 inches. So we'll make sure that we have it correctly there. From those, we're going to set these aside, and then I'm going to take the other long piece, and I'm going to cut 2 of these strips into 16 inch strips. And this will give us our 2 second borders that we're going to be putting on our quilt. So I'll cut those. There's that one, and then one more. And we'll be all done cutting the borders out of the white. From our 1/2 yard of red fabric, we're going to cut one 3.5 inch strip into 6 3.5 inch blocks. There again, remember, these are doubled. For our first red border, I have cut 2 1.5 inch strips, and then I have subcut them into 2 20 inch strips and 2 14 inch strips. For our binding, I have cut 2 2.5 inch strips. When we get to our quilt together, then we're going to go ahead and recut them so we'll have them in the correct length. Now we're going to start laying out our quilt. I'm going to start up here in the left-hand corner, place my red, then my white, and my blue fabric. Go to the second row, come down, and just keep laying everything out. Now the blue, move this up a little bit, white and red. Then we're going to take another red and a white and a blue. We're coming along pretty good here. Now I'm going to need another white, another red, another white, and then the last row will be the blue, the white, and the red. Now I have this one little piece of blue left over. We're not going to place this on the wall hanging until it is sewn, and then I will show you how to applique this little piece on. So we'll just set that aside for the time being. Now we're going to stack our blocks, and I'm going to take these and I'm going to just take them right along this way. That we will be sewing them in the opposite direction actually. And this seems to work out fine. There we have those all stacked. Now is a little trick that I like to use is I have these little sticky things that you can buy for like garage sales and things. I sometimes, when I've got a few here to keep track of, I'll just put one of those on there, and I'm going to make this row number 1. And then I'll take the next one and make that row number 2. So just in case when you're sewing, if things get a little bit mixed up or somebody comes in and you forget where you are, that will help you. And I'm going to make this row number 3 on down the row, so that when you place them beside your sewing machine, you'll know just where you're going. There we got. Now we have our 6 rows all stacked. When we get them all stacked and ready to go, then we take them over to the sewing machine and start sewing and putting them together. Now we're going to start sewing our blocks together. Before we start though, let's recheck our 1/4 inch seams. I'm going to use my little guide that I showed you before in my masking tape for mine. Also, we're going to make sure that we have our stitches at 12 stitches per inch. I've laid my fabric to my left and I have my pins so we can start sewing. I'm going to take our first little bundle here. I'm going to remove the little sticker because I really don't need that anymore. I'm going to take my red square and I'm going to put the white square on top of it. Get this all lined up really well. And it helps to put a little pin there just so that you keep everything nice and straight. I'm going to put it in my sewing machine, bring down my foot, and I'm going to sew. I'm going to make that 1/4 inch, and remember not to sew over your pins, okay? So we'll just sew along that way. I'll take that off, and we'll put our next piece on. Cut that off like that. Now when we get to this point, we want to make sure it's nice. You know your red was first, now your white, and we're going to be sure we put our blue in the correct place. We don't want it over here to the side. We'll put that right there. There again, I'm going to line these up together because remember, accuracy is most important. I'll stick a little pin here in the middle, and then I'm going to sew this one. There again, I'll lay my foot down, put it right on my masking tape as my measure for a 1/4 inch. There we go. That one's all sewn. So that gives us one block basically sewn together. Now that we have our 3 squares sewn together, I'm going to take my little sticker and I'm going to place it back on the red one. And when I'm going to place it to the side, but I'm going to turn it upside down so that it stays in order. Now we can come to our second group of blocks. There again, I have the white one. I'm going to take the red one, place it on top, and remember we always place our blocks right sides together. I'm going to pin this a little bit. Then I'm going to again sew it, my 1/4 inch seam. Take out the pin. There. Okay. Raise up my foot. Now you have to remember where you were. We were on white first, red, and now I'm going to take my other white strip. I'm there again. I'm going to place it right on that raw edge, pin it, and sew it. There we go. Raise my foot, needle in there. There we go. It's all set. And there again, I'm going to take my little sticker and put it back on. I'm going to put it on the white one, and I'll turn it upside down on my pile. I'm going to continue sewing the blocks together. We're going to start pressing our blocks. First of all, I'm going to take my number 1 little sticker off, and I'm going to turn this block over. I'm going to have my seams coming towards me, and then I'm going to take my iron, and in ironing on your quilt, you only press it down and press it down. You don't glide the iron, because you do that, then you're going to distort your fabric. I get done pressing that, I'm going to put my number 1 sticker right back on top, and then I'll place it over here to the side. Number 2, I'm going to take it, and this way I'm going to have my seams coming towards me. So there again, I'm going to press that very quickly. That way, number 2's on there, I can place it in that direction. Number 3, I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to have this one go opposite me. And I just can press down a little bit. You can kind of hand press it a little bit to make your seams nice and straight. Take that, press it down, put your iron on it, you might wiggle around a little bit, and then I'm going to put this back on here. Place it upside down. Now we're on to row number 4. Take this off. I'm going to have these seams come towards me. There again, I'm going to take that down a little bit, press it, press it. Put the number 4 back on. Row number 5, the same, take them off my sticker, and I'll have this going away from me. I'm not doing a good job here. There we go. And here we are to row number 6. Set this down. Seams going away from me and away from me. Now we have all those ready to go, and we'll start putting them together. Now we're going to sew our first set of blocks together. I'm going to take my block number 1 and my block number 2, and I'm going to put those together, right sides together. And I'm going to pin them, but first I'd like to show you a little technique that we have called nesting. When we start putting our first seams together, remember I had told you about taking one set of seams down and one set of seams in the opposite direction, and this was called nesting. And I'm going to take our pin and I'm going to put it right on that seam line. I'm going to do it with the opposite one also. Now by doing this, we're getting very, very accurate seams, just like we have here on the quilt itself. It's important to get these as close together as you can. Now we're going to start sewing our squares together in our first seam. I'm going to take a quick look and make sure that everything seems to be lined up okay, and it seems to be fine. So I'm going to put it underneath the foot, and we're going to sew again on our 1/4 inch. And remember, accuracy. When I get to the pin, I'm going to take it away, and then I'm going to continue on sewing right on through. There we go. Perfect. Bring this up. I'm going to cut it off, and I'm going to check my seam just to make sure how it looks like it's lining up, and it looks like it's pretty good. So I'm very pleased with that. So I've got 1, 2, now I'm going to do 3. I'm going to place this on top of it. Make sure that my seams are going in the opposite direction, just like we planned. Underneath, down, on top, forward, pin that. Go to the next seam, do the same thing. There we go. Now this seam is ready to be sewn. Take that, line it up. 1/4 inch, and we sew. Towards the pin, that away. Okay, we're getting to the end of our second seam. There you go. Take this off. Now I have 3 pieces sewn together and looking pretty good. Now I'm going to continue on sewing, and I've got blocks row number 4, number 5, and number 6, and I'm just going to keep on sewing. We have all our blocks sewn together, and so I'm just going to trim the excess threads off and things. We don't need all those hanging around. And then we're going to go ahead and turn this over. I'm going to take my little stickers off. We don't need those anymore. And I'm going to press. First of all, though, I think I need to cut off a little bit, trimming a little bit back here too. So there again, I'm going to press down on my fabric and bring the iron down and just hold it on top of there for just a second. There again. Now if you find that you're not getting enough steam, at this point it's not a bad idea just to spritz the whole thing with a little bit of spray starch. It firms the fabric up a little bit, so it makes it easier for you to handle. It's not quite so slippery. The next one, I'm going to have it go down in the same direction. Press the iron on, raise it up. Continue on down that way. Yeah. Just remember not to glide your iron. I know it's really hard not to do that, but it'll be fine. So now we'll turn it over, and there we are. All done. For our next episode, we're going to be needing some fusible webbing. And this we will use on our applique when we sew it down to our wall hanging. That way it'll stay nice and smooth. I have 3 ways here that you can buy the webbing. This is called Heat and Bond, and it's sold in most of our fabric stores. You can also buy it by the yard, and then the easiest way, because our square is so small, in your grocery store, sometimes they have fusible webbing that you would use for hemming. So look around and see which is most convenient for you to have. That's all for today. Looking forward. See you next time.